Okay, good afternoon and welcome everyone. Welcome to the inaugural NGG Australia India webinar series. This series is in addition and complements the NGG Australia India conversations which we started about 10 months ago, where we interview senior stakeholders within the Australia India space and talk about current contemporary topics. And we provide information and educate. Today we have approximately 100 people registered and joining us. I'd like to just go through the agenda very quickly with everybody. The agenda today will be where I will introduce our speaker. The speaker will speak for 20 to 25 minutes, which will be followed by a set of questions which have already been presented to us. And I will ask those questions at the end of the speaker's address, and then we'll have a vote of thanks. We'll aim to have this session finished within 45 minutes. And so today's session will focus on navigating the COVID-19 crisis and how resilient is India. This webinar will explore three main topics. What steps have the Indian government taken to date? How resilient is the Indian economy in the current scenario? Which sectors offer an opportunity for global investors and foreign businesses? And ladies and gentlemen, we're delighted and honored today to have Mr. Suresh Prabhu with us. Mr. Prabhu is currently the Indian Prime Minister's Sherpa for the G20 and the G7 summits. He is a Rajya Sabha MP from Andhra Pradesh and has been a four-time member of the Lok Sabha from Rajapur constituency, Rajapur constituency in Maharashtra, one of the biggest states in India. Mr. Prabhu was a former Union Minister of Commerce and Industry, Civil Aviation, Railways, Environment, Power and Heavy Industries for the Government of India. Mr. Prabhu is a rare politician, having a strong focus on undertaking reforms, scripting turnarounds and achieving excellent results by working in mission mode. A chartered accountant, law graduate and research scholar, Mr. Prabhu is known as a man of action. He has introduced major reforms in India's power sector and the Indian railways. Noticeable reforms were the rail budget merger with the general budget and steering the Electricity Act that formed the backbone for power sector reforms. An advocate for decisive growth-driven change, he has been responsible for leading some of India's major policies such as Make in India, Digital India, and ease of doing business reforms, which are playing a significant role in fueling India's growth economy. His major work focus area has been boosting domestic manufacturing, trade promotions, pivoting multilateralism on India, investment promotion, technology and innovation, and boosting the startup ecosystem. Mr. Suresh Prabhu, welcome and thank you very much for being our inaugural speaker. We're delighted to have you here and I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dipen, and thank you, my friends from Australia who on a Friday afternoon, which normally would have been probably the time to pack and go for a country house or go out and enjoy the time with the family and friends. But in an atmosphere like this, everybody has to be confined to their own home. And I think this is a very new experience for all of us, that not to go out and be at home and still feel at home. That's a big challenge for everybody is facing today. And at that time, I think there's a time for introspection, time for reflection. Therefore, I think this is a very good idea that we are talking about this very important issue. We are actually talking about the impact of coronavirus, COVID, on the lives of people. And I think this is a very interesting phenomena that no country in the world, probably very, very few exceptions, every country is affected, almost every country. It is a very interesting phenomena in which rich countries, poor countries, small countries, big countries, island nations and continental nations, all of them have been affected, some very severely, some not so severely, but still everybody is affected. And therefore, this is a challenge which we have to meet by all of us joining our total energies together and fighting this menace together. Interestingly, just before this, particularly in the year 2018-19, we have been discussing about the future of multilateralism. We have been questioning the need for inter-country participation and cooperation. This is one example in which we can see that without all countries joining hands, all humanity, forget countries, all humanity trying to share their ideas, knowledge together, will not be able to fight this. And at this time, we are discussing about how India and Australia should try to fight it together, not just COVID, but even the post-COVID issues. Obviously, there has been a conversation between your Prime Minister, my Prime Minister. We discuss bilaterally. They have been discussing this in multilateral forums. There has been a G20 virtual summit recently under the presidency of Saudi Arabia, in which again, the leaders have discussed the possibilities of cooperation in the multilateral platforms. While we do all this, while we fight, while we try to contain the virus, while we try to take care of people, so containment, care is all going on. Cure is going on. Care, cure, containment is on. While we do that, I think it's also time to think about beyond this. And when it settles down, obviously economic activity will have to come out and take a precedence on it. Particularly between India and Australia, there is a tremendous scope. Already we have been discussing bilaterally. I remember my visit to Canberra as a Commerce Industry Minister, when I met almost the entire important cabinet minister. In fact, the current Prime Minister, who was then a treasurer, I had a good fortune of meeting him. Mr. Stephen Xiaobo, who was the Commerce Minister then, I had meeting him. I met the Agriculture Minister. I met Agriculture Minister, who is probably from the alliance partner of the ruling party. So I met him. I met almost everybody. And we discussed the potential of bilateralism and trying to work together and try to develop this relationship. I think I can clearly see that Australia has taken a very interesting initiative. The former Foreign Secretary, Mr. Peter Verghese of Australia, was tasked to prepare a report about the potential of India-Australia relationship. In fact, that was released when I was there in Canberra. And in that, he has spelled out the huge potential for cooperation, and in which he mentions so many new interesting ideas. And I'll mention a few of them. Also at the time, we prepared a roadmap for $5 trillion India's economy, which would be 20% of $5 trillion will come from industry, that's $1 trillion. 60% of $5 trillion, that's $3 trillion will come from services, and $1 trillion will come from agriculture and allied activities. The reason being that when we grow, we'll also lead to a little bit balance our economic activity. Currently, our industry is 16%, which we want to take it to 20%. And therefore, all of this will result into Australia preparing a roadmap, same time India had prepared it. I had released this as a Commerce Industry Minister, the document which I had prepared, and I think this will become a basis for cooperation. Australia document, India document. I think this is one good opportunity. Australia has some very intrinsic strengths. Land, of course, is plenty. Natural resources are huge. Population is small. India has a little bit of a different profile. We have about 2.2% of the land, but 17% of the population. We have only 4% of the water to feed agriculture and other things. But there are certain similarities. Australia is also very well developed agriculture economy. Australia has natural resources which India might need. Therefore, there is a need for cooperation and collaboration. India has need in the next few years' time a huge amount of natural resources available in Australia, and therefore we can collaborate and work together. India's service sector offers opportunities for Australia. Our medical care, our hospitality industry, our aviation industry. India's aviation now stands number 3. Of course, now everything is grounded globally and so is in India. But before that, we're the fastest growing aviation sector in India. In 2019, January 15th and 16th, I had organized a global aviation summit in Mumbai, in India, which was attended by 87 countries. It was the first of its kind anywhere in the world when all the stakeholders related to aviation came together and discussed the strategies for growth. In that, again, we found out a potential for cooperation between different countries, including Australia. So therefore, there is a very important potential for working together and trying to find out how we can do that. I'm very sure that Australian companies and Australian businesses can look at destination India in a big way. Just give an example. Australia used to export a lot of pulses to India, which contains a lot of proteins, and many Indians who are vegetarians, for them protein intake is so critical, and one of the few options for taking protein is pulses. Then we grew more pulses in India, so Australia lost out a market share and was little concerned. I had proposed to the Australians that why don't you start in a different way? Why don't you look at India's agriculture in which we can collaborate in different ways? There are possibilities of farm to market potential. We need to develop cold chains. We need to develop high-tech warehouses. We need to do food processing. And all of that, Australia is very good at. So why not look at potential of investing into this? In fact, I was glad to say that the Australian government was extremely positive, and we are trying to work on strategies to put that into action. Second potential in service sector is India's IT is pretty good. So our IT professionals can provide support to Australia's growing needs for automation and organization. So that's another important area of potential. Thirdly, because you're also based in Sydney, there are many Superfunds who are very active in Australia. In fact, very interestingly, and thanks to the visionary leadership of the Australian political leadership as well as the social leadership in Australia, that they thought about these Superfunds some years ago. And now they have grown to such size that the total Superfunds are more than Australia's total GDP. That would mean that they have to invest outside Australia. India offers a very good market, very good potential. And in fact, I had a roundtable in Sydney with a super pension fund and Superfund. And I was invited them on 6th of December 2018. I had organized the first ever roundtable of funds in Goa. And now it is going on because I had announced it will happen every year. And there we again invited the funds. So this is a great potential for working together. There's another area in which you can always work together is Australians wanted to invest in India. There's a potential that they can actually have industrial parks that we already created in India, where they can come and invest without any difficulty. In the context of climate change, India and Australia must work together. I'm really sorry because Australia is being hit very severely before it's COVID by bushfires. In fact, they were not contained for a long time. They caused huge losses. And in fact, the forest are the carbon sinks. When you lose forest, it actually amounts to more emission. Fires, again, must have emitted a lot of greenhouse gases by the fire itself. Also, the fires have brought about land use change. And that again is going to cause a lot of damages. So I think in that area, again, we can work together. And the context of climate change, its impact on agriculture. which is important for you, important for India. And therefore, how can we think about a new framework of economic cooperation in terms of climate change? In fact, your former ambassador to India was a very great champion, and I think he looks after Australia's strategy for climate change. And he has written a very good piece in Guardian recently, and he's my dear friend. He sent it to me. And I think I can clearly see that one area of cooperation is on climate change per se, but other is the impact of climate change on economic activity. And how do you therefore guard each of us against that climate change impact, and therefore how to work that? One of that is agriculture, and we should try to work on that. In natural resources, we have seen one of India's top companies, Adani's, are trying to invest into Australia's natural resources. That again is an opportunity for cooperation in natural resource space. So therefore, there is a very good opportunity. The other opportunities I can see cooperation is into research and development. I was very impressed with the agriculture research that Australian universities are doing. Besides the Australian government-sponsored research institutions are doing. India has a very large system of agriculture research under the auspices of ICR, Indian Council for Agriculture Research. I can see great cooperation of working on research and development for commercialization of research, taking research out of laboratories into the fields of agriculture to make various aspects of it. How do you withstand the effect of pest on agriculture? How do you make sure that we can improve productivity? How can we improve the input and optimize it? Less water, more crops. And that's the Prime Minister's program. Our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi has a vision to make double farmers' income. How can Australia's participation into that can help us through research and development window? Another important mission of a Prime Minister is Swachh Bharat, Clean India. I can see great cooperation between Australia and India, where waste management. 1.32 billion people in India produce so much of waste. Can you convert that into wealth? Can you convert that into energy? Can you make it without incineration? Because if you incinerate, again, it has ill effect. Can you convert that with certain processes and make it valuable? That's another very important potential for growth into the development of areas. There is also possibility, and you mentioned railways. We had already tried to work on railways cooperation between Australia. Australia has a huge railway network. I think we have the same imperial power that time. So British developed in railways in India, in EU. In fact, yesterday we celebrated India's anniversary of railways, which was started in India, and that was yesterday was the anniversary. Well, Australia moves a huge quantity of goods by railways into Australia. We can actually think about working together. We are developed with a Japanese collaboration, a very high-tech, very large network of railways, goods, only dedicated freight corridor. We can work on working together to make it more effective and more possibility of working together. There is already a possibility of finding out how we can work in the context of new changes now that is going to take place post-COVID. Can you work on a collaboration for water? Water management is going to be a very critical issue for India. One is improving quality of water. Second, how do you make use of water more efficient? India uses 89% of water for agriculture. How can we make water use more efficient, more optimum? That's again a mission of a Prime Minister. He has created a new ministry called Jal Shakti, in which the Prime Minister's idea is to take tap water to every household so that quality of water get issues addressed. Quality of water being so important, it causes waterborne diseases, and many fatalities that happen in India is due to waterborne diseases, whether it's diarrhea or others. So we have to work closely on possibility of cooperation, because I've seen in Australia, and I visited so many institutions. I've been to Australia many times, and I've seen in Australia the potential for collaboration in this area of water. We can always work on possibilities of infrastructure. India's need for infrastructure is going to be several $1 trillion in the years to come. So we can actually work together. It's also possible post-COVID, when we'll discuss about whenever there is a typhoon, where there is a big cyclone comes in, the immediate attempt of authorities is to deal with how do you now save lives, how to rescue people. That's what we are doing in COVID. We try to save lives. But then post-cyclone, what happens? Is the rehabilitation. It's a bringing people to normal lives. That's what is going to happen in COVID. Once this phase is over, we'll start to find out how do you get back into work. Today is work from home. Then will be the making sure that we work more and we build better homes. And to build better homes, we'll have to create more incomes. To create more incomes, we'll have to find out more opportunities to do that. And in that phase, we'll find out cooperation. So infrastructure is going to be very important activity for India. There are many industries in India have, as you can see during this crisis, one of them was the pharmaceutical industry. You mentioned some of my previous responsibilities. I had 10 cabinet positions right from 1996 under Mr. Vajpayee, 4 under our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And one of that responsibility was Chemicals and Fertilizer Ministry, which included pharmaceuticals. I'm very happy to see my pharma industry now becoming globally competitive. We have supplied medicines and pharmaceutical products at this time to more than 50 countries. Some of the pharma products that we produce, probably India is the largest producer of that genre of pharmaceutical products. And countries even like US, like Germany, European countries, they wanted those medicines from India because we produce quality medicines. So like that, there is going to be collaboration on some of this industry, including automobiles, which incidentally is more than 52% of India's manufacturing GDP. So manufacturing, 52% come from automobile sector alone. They are very good. They make 2-wheelers, 3-wheelers, 4-wheelers. They make large commercial vehicles. All of that we are making in India. And I think there is a potential to even grow that. There are certain countries like Japan, they already said that they want to move manufacturing outside China, and they said that they'd like to put it somewhere else. So India will be very happy to welcome them. India will be very happy to welcome Australia. And I think we can work together on many such areas. We have a huge potential of partnering on people-to-people basis. I think your institute, there are other institutes who try to promote this bilateral piece. They can actually really help us to work together and make it happen. I can clearly see the potential going to many areas, but looking at a watch, because you said I should speak for about 20-25 minutes, I would stop here and answer the questions. But I can tell you one thing, that we'll be very happy to look at ideas emanating from my friends in Australia, from the Australian government, from Australian business, from Australian universities, from Australian Superfunds, Australian civil society. And we can always work together to find out ways of working and taking this conversation forward. So thank you very much. I once again thank all my friends who have joined into this conversation, and we can always take this forward as we go along. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Prabhu. Very enlightening chat in regards to the opportunities between Australia and India. May I just sort of ask you a quick question in regards to the current COVID crisis in India, and how resilient is India, and what is the government doing in the current crisis to make sure that obviously the death rates are low, the country comes back to normality in as short a period as possible. So what are the steps that the government is taking, and how resilient is India going forward, just in the COVID crisis?
As you know, we have a large population, 29-30 states, some union territories, and this effort is led by our Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who took very early action and largely very proactive action. He has been actively involved with conversation with all the chief ministers of the various states, as well as administrators of union territories. Sometimes he is our central government, union government, federal government is talking directly to even to district administrators, the medical officers in the district, the police officers in the district, and therefore there has been a very good close coordination between the federal government, the state governments, which the like provincial governments, and also the district administration working in various states. We have almost 729 districts. So each district, we are trying to involve and trying to talk to them. Few steps that we took was first, obviously, this is an disease. This is a virus which came from outside. So we were actually screening all the incoming passengers. When we realized that there are some affected patients, particularly in Kerala, which is the southern tip of India, they took a very good steps. They were isolated, they were treated, they got well. And then now we are working on pan-India basis. There are a lot of tests being conducted by Indian Council for Medical Research. The Health Ministry is actively involved into this. The Cabinet Secretary, who in fact, Mr. Peter Verghese used to be your Cabinet Secretary or the Foreign Secretary in Australia. So we are working on that, and we are trying to take very active and proactive steps to take this forward. People are very well cooperating. We are seeing people themselves are trying to give ideas. There have been so many hundreds or thousands, or I would say even few 100,000 community kitchens being run by people themselves to feed for those who need the help. Because as I said, India is being a large country. There are some poorer states where the migrant labor go and work in the large cities like Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, or Hyderabad, or Surat, or some other places. So there, after the close down, or because of the necessary and inevitable close down, shut down, the people became jobless. So people are giving them, feeding them, ensuring that they get whatever support they need. So these are very unbelievable, and I would say unprecedented display of community participation into the government effort of containing this virus. I see India still very low number of infections as well as very small number of deaths. But still we are not taking any chances. The Prime Minister has now extended the lockup to 3rd of May, and all other states are also joining hands. And therefore I can see very clearly that we are absolutely above the curve to find out that we can work together and try to address this problem.
Perfect, thank you. We've had some questions that have been sent to us by the audience, and I'd like to ask a couple from some of the audience. You mentioned earlier that you started the process of the reports after the Peter Verghese report was released in Australia. Today we have the author of the Indian government's report, Ambassador Anil Wadhwa, who's the chair of the CII task force with us. And Ambassador Wadhwa has a couple of questions. The first one is, India needs to keep the COVID-19 cases down. Is there a fear that once the economic activity resumes, the number will spread? How can India contain the spread, and how can India test more?
See, firstly, you cannot stop economic activity permanently. So it has to stop one day or the other. But the initial testing that we have done, and we are doing enough testing necessary as advised by the professionals like Indian Council for Medical Research, they're stepping it up. We are also doing as many as necessary. But when the economic activity starts, we'll obviously be taking care to begin with. We'll try to keep social distancing. There has been already the industry like CII and the FICCI and others are actually involved to provide guidelines. In fact, there's very good guidelines which have been prepared to ensure that the economic activity also will start in a manner that will not risk people to the possibility of getting infected. So we actually are taking those measures. Also, it's possible because nobody knows about this virus today, honestly. Nobody knows. It's all guesswork. A lot of research going on globally, including in India. There are 5-6 Indian companies trying to develop a vaccine. In fact, there are some fantastic Indian companies who have global leadership in development of vaccines. So they're also working on it, but it's going to take some time. While this is on, and therefore I said nobody knows the nature of the virus. Nobody knows exactly how to deal with it. And everybody is trying to struggle to find out. So nobody knows whether it can come back. Nobody knows, because like a flu, it can come back seasonally. Does it come back? Doesn't come back? So we have to be ready to deal with any contingencies. But to assure the ambassador, he will take all the necessary measures to ensure that even with resuming of economic activity will not pose challenge. It should not pose challenge to the lives of people, and we'll definitely work on that.
I have a second question from Ambassador Wadhwa, which relates to the Australia-India relationship, and it goes like this. In the current scenario, how can India and Australia cooperate to develop a COVID-19 vaccine and jointly produce medical equipment, including protective gear, remote thermometers, spray drones, ventilators, and masks in order to be self-sufficient? And should there be a social task force set up to coordinate this activity?
So in fact, Ambassador Wadhwa is a very seasoned diplomat and also a good friend of mine. And his wife, again, very distinguished diplomat who retired as an ambassador of Japan. And therefore, both of them, as a couple, they're doing a very good job in terms of developing ideas. He's now as a head of the task force. In fact, we had discussion some time ago about how the task force can actually be the new engine for growth of bilateral relationship. So one part is, obviously there is a tremendous scope for collaboration. Best way is G2G, wherein government organizations, also B2B, because there are a lot of private companies in India, Serum Institute, whether Mr. Kiran Mazumdar's Biocon, and many others who are doing fantastic job in development of institutions. Mr. Poonawalla, in fact, the Cyrus Poonawalla, who is in the Serum Institute in Pune. There are many, many fantastic people who are actually leading the fight against coronavirus and racing against the time to develop it as soon as possibility. On medical equipments, in fact, as you mentioned earlier when you were introducing me, that I'm the MP, Member of Parliament now, at my 6th term in the Parliament. 4 times I was in lower house, now 2nd time in the upper house. My present state that I represent is from Andhra Pradesh, where we have set up a special economic zone dedicated only to medical equipment. It's a very interesting zone near Visakhapatnam on the east coast of India, and therefore there is tremendous scope for collaboration. We obviously now, after this post-COVID, when we start activities, there's going to be and bound to be a focus on public health. So people now are struggling to find out ventilators. People are trying to find out protective equipments. There are no gloves. There are not enough necessary equipments that we call it personal protection equipment. So we are lacking that. So I think once we have that, once we need that, and we need more beds, we need everything. So public health, rightly so, will become another focal point after the COVID. And there I think there's going to be tremendous cooperation for participation.
Dr. Jay Kundiana, CEO of Eco-Pacific, asks, what are the barriers for FTA between India and Australia? The Australia-China FTA has been working fine since inception and helped grow the bilateral trade to a great extent. Why can't India be benefited by such an FTA?
You know, we have been negotiating it for a while now, and then we're also trying to negotiate under the little bigger auspices of RCEP. But both are currently, RCEP India decided to back out of that, and therefore bilaterally it is still on. I'm sure the ongoing negotiations will yield some results over a period of time. As you know, any FTA is fraught with so many challenges, because every country wants to protect their domestic business, at the same time exploit opportunities in other spaces. So it's a very long drawn process which needs this, I'm sure. But knowing the political closeness that India and Australia shares, because of the so many people of Indian origin based in Australia, naturalized in Australia, there is another very important element of that. I would also say that Australia-India collaboration in cricket, which is also not, cannot be just be ignored. In fact, many Australian players who now play IPL, not in 2020, of course, but maybe I'm sure post-COVID 2021, they're very popular players in India. So there are so many building blocks, bilateral, for developing these bilateral relationship and taking it to economic relationship on a much stronger basis. So I'm sure that will happen over a period of time.
Thank you. Mr. Sanjeev Nankiolia asks, there has been an over-reliance on China. What could be the options to wean away in the short to medium terms? Will India witness more increased protectionism to safeguard domestic industries?
No, actually, I don't know whether there will be, I think right now there is a tremendous potential for any business to move into India. For a simple reason is India's intrinsic strength, India's ability to offer, and you mentioned ease of doing business in India. We are constantly improving the ranking of ease of doing business in India. We are trying to rationalize the manufacturing. In fact, now we have said that if any new company starts manufacturing in India, the corporate tax will be just 15%. So just imagine. So Prime Minister Modi has a very ambitious program for manufacturing in India, make in India, but not just make in India for India. You can make in India for global markets. You can do that. Good example is auto components. They make in India, but they actually have become part of a global supply chain, global value chain. So bringing companies into India will be good for those companies, that they get trained manpower, they get infrastructure, as I mentioned, industrial parks, they get opportunities. India has 7,600 long coastline. So we can have coastal based investment, so they can actually export it to other countries. We are actually having a lot of good relationship with almost all countries in the world that will help in promoting it. So I think there's a great opportunity for business to move into India. I really look forward to that and will be welcoming them. And with the folded hands also, will bow down to them, will not be able to shake hands with them now or post-COVID, because we'll use Namaste, because to protect them. And that would only mean that we are welcoming them. We are not shaking hands, but we are saying, because sometimes you shake hand to say goodbye. But we just say, we are not shaking hands, but we are welcoming you. Please come to India.
Ms. Natasha Jabaska asks, will this crisis be India's opportunity to drive deep reforms at the governance and policy level?
Well, actually, the reform is a continuous process. You mentioned about one reform. I'll tell you, because I dealt with some of the reforms, and particularly power sector you mentioned. I'm just giving you the example, how it transformed one sector. Way back in 2002, when I was the power minister, there used to be peak level shortage of 18%, peak level shortage. There's constant power will not be available. People have to go in for dark hours. Industry was suffering. I introduced only one law called Electricity Act 2003, which has transformed power sector. We got $250 billion of investment into power sector. One sector, $250 billion. That has now transformed that we are now power surplus only because of that one law. It takes time. So obviously reform, and that was such a big reform because in 1948, all the power sector was nationalized and we had created integrated monopolies, and that to state-owned monopolies called state electricity boards, in which generation, transmission, distribution all was under one single head. So one sector reform has transformed it. Business process reform like ease of doing business has resulted into this. Prime Minister came out with the idea of Trinity, wherein we call it JAM, Jandhan, Aadhaar and money transfers, wherein people are now, more than 90% people have social identity, which is called Aadhaar card, which is their unique identity card. Almost all families have bank accounts. So now, because of this crisis, when we are transferring money, we can transfer it directly to the bank account. This is thanks to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who would make this happen. So Modi ji, Prime Minister Modi, is completely committed to reform, and they will be having sectorally, they will be having at macro level, they will be having at district level. I'll give an example. As a Commerce Industry Minister, I started a program, and this is very interesting, that if all the 729 districts of India, they start growing at 3 or 4% more than the normal growth, can India's GDP not grow by 3 or 4% more? Because at the end of the day, aggregation of all the district GDP is India's GDP. Because economic activity happens in district. You only accumulate it nationally and try to make a figure. So we started that program in 6 districts of India. That is going to also bring transformation. That is going to bring in reforms of a different kind at a grassroots level. Because when you want to grow it by 3%, you will find out what are the bottlenecks. Why is the activity not reaching its full optimum level? So these are the kind of reforms at macro level and micro level are happening. So I'm sure post-COVID there will be opportunity. I really look forward to working with my Australian friends and try to work together. So we will be waiting for a kangaroo which keeps leapfrogging all the time. I think this is what we like to do. Our tiger will also try to catch the speed of kangaroo, and kangaroo and tiger can join hands and we can work together.
Thank you. I have 2 last questions and then we'll finish this off. They're very similar questions. One is from Mr. Parth Joshi, and the other one is from Ms. Sheba Nandkiolia. Sheba asks, when do you see the import-export activities getting back to normal? And Mr. Parth Joshi asks, what is the time frame for the world to resume out of COVID-19 crisis?
You know, the economic activity beginning early next week, some activity will start. So we are partially allowing the economic activity to open up. So good activity will start. Export are actually still going on. In fact, we'll be happy to know that agriculture export. And when as a Commerce Industry Minister, I prepared India's first ever agriculture export policy. In my old constituency, which is from Konkan on the west coast of India, we make the best world mangoes, the Alfonso mangoes. I'm sure you like to, when I'm talking about Alfonso mangoes, I can see on your face that you are feeling when can I taste
Absolutely.
one.
Yes.
So I think those mangoes we started exporting already. And therefore, pharma products are getting exported. So, I mean, to completely resume it to the normal might take some time, but it's already starting to go on. When globally or even in India, the entire lockdown will be opened up depends upon the situation. It is evolving, but I'm sure the Prime Minister is very clear that he said last time that he wants to save lives, but also protect livelihood. He has said that if you're alive, then you can enjoy the world. But he said in his last speech that I want both at the same time. I want to protect lives, but also make sure that the life also prospers. So I think we will work on both at the same time. There is a trade-off, but we'll obviously make trade-off in such a way that both can be protected at the same time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. On that note, we're dead on 1:15, and I know you have to be at another meeting. Thank you so much, Mr. Prabhu, for taking the time to be with us and sharing your thoughts. Very much appreciated. We actually have many more questions, but we just don't have time. And we'd hope that, post COVID-19, that you'll join us again and celebrate with us the victories and the resilience of India. Thank you so much. Namaskar.
I thank you, all of you. And I can tell you something that Dipen mentioned that there are so many more questions. I can say I have so many more answers. But as we go along, we'll work on answers more than questions, and we'll try to answer the biggest question that the world is facing today. How do you live in harmony with nature? That's the most important thing to do. One of the best way to fight any disease is go back to our normal natural lifestyle. I think that's the best way to ensure that nature doesn't hit back and try to say that my dear son, you exceeded your mandate. I sent you here for something else and you are doing much more than I ever could imagine. So I think if you do that, you'll be able to do that. So I think this is the biggest question we all need to answer. I'm sure this answer will not let many more questions to be raised over a period of time about the future of human life. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.